Chapter 5. The Wisdom of the Ocean, John Florence. The Return to the Mana. The mechanical hum of the surf ranch didn't just fade. It was swallowed by the raw, organic roar of a living ocean. The air lost its sterile, inland stillness and became heavy with the scent of wild ginger, damp basalt, and the massive, salty spray of the Pacific. Kai opened her eyes to the North Shore. 2024. This wasn't the vintage sepia of Duke's 1920s, nor the psychedelic grit of Jerry's 1970s. This was the present. The colors were hypervivid. The water was a deep, electric cobalt, and the sand was a brilliant bone white. In her hands, the board was a masterpiece of modern fluid dynamics, light as a feather, yet incredibly strong. But as she looked at the horizon, she realized that no amount of technology could protect her here. The waves at log cabins were shifting, unpredictable, and possessed an almost sentient power. The son of the reef, sitting out past the impact zone, watching the horizon with the casual ease of someone sitting on their front porch, was a man who seemed to be vibrating at the same frequency as the water. John Florence. While Kelly Slater looked like a scientist calculating the wave, John looked like he was listening to it. He grew up here, in a house just steps away from the sand. He hadn't learned the ocean, he had been marinated in it. You're looking for the patterns, aren't you? John asked as Kai paddled up, her arms already beginning to ache from the heavy current. He didn't look at her. He was watching a small flock of birds diving half a mile out at sea. I'm trying to understand where they break, Kai said, wiping the salt from her eyes. But it keeps changing. That's because it's not a machine, John said, his voice quiet and humble. The ocean doesn't have a schedule. It has a mood. If you try to calculate it, you'll always be a second late. You have to learn to feel the pulse before the wave even appears. The language of the deep. John pointed to the far horizon, where nothing but a slight darkening of the water was visible to the untrained eye. Look there, he whispered. See the way the light reflects off that ripple. That's not just wind. That's the energy of a storm 3,000 miles away hitting the outer reef. It's telling us what's coming in 10 minutes. Most surfers look at the lip of the wave. You have to look at the everything. He spoke to her about his life, not about the world titles or the fame, but about his days spent sailing across the Pacific, away from the crowds and the cameras. He talked about how, when you are 1,000 miles from land, the ocean becomes your only teacher. People talk about the loop as something to escape, John said, finally turning his blue eyes toward her. But the ocean is the ultimate loop. The water evaporates, it becomes clouds, it rains, it flows back to the sea. The swell travels for days, it breaks, it returns. To have mana isn't to be stronger than the ocean. It's to realize you are a part of that cycle. You aren't riding the infinite. You are the infinite. The dance of intuition. The birds he had been watching suddenly scattered. The darkening on the horizon grew into a massive, jagged ridge of water. "This is a big one," John said, his posture shifting from relaxed to focused in a heartbeat. "Don't think about the geometry. Don't think about the bolt or the alea. Just listen to the water under your board. It will tell you where to go." A massive peak rose up, shifting and wobbling as it hit the uneven reef. In a pool, this wave would be a mistake. Here, it was a masterpiece of complexity. John took off. He didn't just drop in, he seemed to melt into the face of the wave. He did a turn so powerful that it sent a curtain of water 30 feet into the air. Yet his body remained perfectly calm. He wasn't forcing the board. He was responding to the microscopic vibrations of the water. "Your turn, Kai," he shouted, his voice disappearing into the roar. Kai turned. The wave was a chaotic wall of moving energy. She felt the urge to calculate her move, to be precise like Kelly had taught her. But then she remembered John's words. "Listen to the pulse." She stopped thinking. She felt the water pushing against the bottom of her board. She felt the slight suction of the reef pulling at the wave. She popped up, and instead of a rigid turn, she let the board chatter over the surface, finding the line of least resistance. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She was observing. She was a passenger on a 3 million-year-old journey of energy. She carved a long, beautiful line that followed the exact contour of the wave's power. The lesson of the pulse. As they paddled back out, the spray from the breaking waves creating rainbows in the air, Kai felt a profound sense of peace. The loop of her anxiety had been replaced by the pulse of the planet. "You heard it," John said, with a nod of approval. "You stopped trying to be the master, and you became the student. That's where the real power is. Mana isn't something you take. It's something you receive when you're quiet enough to hear it." He looked toward a small, hidden beach further down the coast, where the vibe was less about the big wave and more about the big soul. "You have the intuition now," John said, "but you're still carrying the weight of expectation. You need to remember why we did this in the first place, before the world titles and the technology. You need to find the joy." He pointed to a figure walking along the sand with a long, flowy style and a smile that seemed to catch the sun. "Go find Rob. He'll show you that the best surfer in the water is always the one having the most fun." The vivid, high-stakes energy of the North Shore began to soften into a mellow, golden-brown haze. The roar of the surf turned into the gentle strumming of an acoustic guitar.